And hello, Elevation Tribe. I hope all of you are well. I want to take some time to answer a question that's come up a lot. Um, that it's a very common thing, especially with spiritually seeking people, that they have what they perhaps would describe as energy issues or energy depletion. And they're constantly saying, why am I constantly lacking energy? Why am I so tired? I have foggy brain. I feel depleted all the time. So there's quite a few things to say here. Definitely more that can be interesting in a short few-minute video. But we'll address what we call the Rashi Prakam, just some chapter headings, if you will, to explore this together, to give you something to chew on and consider when going through this program and trying to find your own healing. Um, First of all, the best way to see it is, we kind of assume often that everybody has more energy than me, or why am I always so depleted, or is this normal, or is this healthy? So the first key way to see it, and the most saying the most basic and obvious way, is everybody has, if you imagine, a certain amount of resource of energy that they use every day, and that they have access to at any given moment. Now, there are two things you can do besides the status quo. There are two elements, so to speak, besides the status quo. One is that which depletes your energy resources, and that which adds is moisif to the energy resource. So the first thing to realize is people's energy resources, natural innate energy resources, will be different. There will always be people who naturally have more. There will always be people that naturally have less, like any koyach, any skill set, any ability. There are people that have better looks and worse looks. There are people that have more money and less money. There are people more intellectual. There are people more innately spiritually or emotionally intelligent. So this exists as well with energy. It's very important to see it and realize it that way. And if you're feeling constant depletion of energy, I'm not implying that you have no energy, though I absolutely am implying that some people are more by nature energy challenged. Now, if you realize that you're energy challenged, that's not condemning yourself, God forbid. But what that is saying is that your default level will be low, and therefore, like anyone, you may be lacking skill sets in business or lacking skill sets in emotional intelligence, but anyone in marriage needs to learn emotional intelligence and needs to, even if they're not naturally gifted in that area, they need to become wise, need to read, they need to practice, and they need to learn. So that doesn't mean that they'll necessarily ever be, a virtuoso, so to speak, a maestro of something, but they can increase the quality of that. And they can certainly diminish or eliminate that which depletes them of that. So first, you have to know what your energy is. I know for myself, from the time I was in my early 20s, I had a major energy issue. I was feeling tired, exhausted, depleting all the time. I was definitely a very ambitious person, and my ambition and my vision and my drive compared to my energy always knocked me over and created cycles of frustration and anger with myself and all these kind of good, healthy states. So with that in mind, my friends, what I want to talk to you about today is a lot of things that I practically learned, and the ways I got over things and grew. Now, at the end of the day, everything is with the siyata dishmaya. I'm never going to say on this subject, this is the thing that changed me, because I know that for years and years and years, I did every kind of intervention and every kind of health thing and new age thing and out of the box solution I can find. And I would like to say, and I can't guarantee what I'm going to say is true, either all of them helped me in a little way or none of them helped me at all. My hunch is that none of them helped me at all. There's definitely nothing I ever came out of 1,000 acupunctures and homeopathics and medicines and dietary elimination diets and all these kind of things. There's nothing that I ever came out with and said, wow, now I'm at a new level, except for what I'm going to tell you at the end. There's lots of things I did enter into, including energy healing, where I had short-term, wow, breakthrough, wow, a day, a week, a month, everything's better. And then within time, boom, right back to the status quo. So there's a few things that I learned. One thing I learned is I'm going to be a low energy person. Now, you're probably laughing when I hear that, because people are always amazed at the few times I ever talk about this personal stuff, like with all I accomplished in the world. I still don't feel I do a quarter of what I could be doing in the world and what I do in life. But I want to show you some assumptions that I've made. And I want to go through some of the most obvious things to the less obvious things. And I think a lot of it will be familiar to you all. As you've heard me talk about these things, they're not directly towards this particular point. So first of all, always imagine that you have a basic reservoir of energy, which is shaykh for your neshama, which is usual for your personality and your consciousness, number one. Always imagine that there's things that are constantly depleting that. And some of those things will, let's call them unhealthiness or problem or issues that deplete that. And some of that is normal everyday life that depletes that. And then the flip side is there are things that give us energy, starting with food, starting with exercise, and things spiritual and meditation and spiritual connection. And there are things that in Kabbalah and Hasidus, I was just reading the Mo'oi Naim today on Chaya Sarah, where he talks explicitly about certain mitzvahs, certain spiritual imperatives in the Torah, and certain aveiros, certain things that disconnect us, that the Torah references, actually deplete our energy and replenish our energy. And he actually says very explicitly that the main things about mitzvahs are they're channels that increase energy into our soul, which he says, and then increases energy to our body, or are things that deplete and cut off the energy flow to our soul and therefore cuts off. He makes that distinction, then cuts off the energy to the body. So all these things have to be understood together. So this idea of here is my status quo, what is taking me, and that could be different for different people. And then what diminishes that within me, and therefore that's what I want to eliminate or minimize, because I can't always eliminate everything destructive, but I need to how to handle it better, with a better attitude, a better state, better spiritual, emotional resources. And then what are the things I can do to up that? Now I'm going to just do Rashi Prachim, short little things. Each of these is a class unto itself. Let's start at the obvious ones just to be a little comprehensive. The obvious ones are some people, I assume that everybody has had, who suffers from this issue, has basic blood tests, have got to your doctor, have realized, hey, maybe I'm lacking in iron, maybe I'm lacking in kind of the B vitamins, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not getting into a debate. I'm not even going to pretend to ever be scientific enough to be able to say, do vitamins work? Do they not work? Do omega-3 things work? Or they not work? But there's people that seem to hold by them. And it's definitely part of the usual hishtadlus, the usual effort is to look into experiment with that. The one thing I can tell you from my personal experience is it all helped a little or it didn't help at all. You know, I definitely went through periods 20 years ago. I bought every single vitamin everyone told me, and I took normal rates and triple rates and quadruple rates. And at the end of the day, that was not the solutions for me. That was not the long-term benefit. So, but definitely try these things. Try the normal, start with the normal medicine, these kind of things as well, besides all the other things I'm going to say. So assuming you've gone through those things, assuming you've checked out for allergies, environmental allergies, food allergies, I definitely had to eliminate a tremendous amount of things from my diet to get to some kind of homeostasis where I wasn't at least hurting my body by eating some things, which is a lot of things. So I'm assuming that if you're having this challenge, you've already looked into dietary issues, allergies, triggers, etc., and those kind of things. Again, some people, those people know who they are in this group, who are worried about black mold. I once saw black mold in the bathroom, and that's what's depleting me. Don't become an idol worshiper. Don't think that these little things can totally destroy my life. Approach this level with balance, with an open mind, with just doing effort, with curiosity. Really, that can contribute to it. Fine, I'd like it to be as clean as possible, and that's enough. And that's enough. I don't have to become panicked every time I see a black mark on the wall, which is really my 4-year-old, you know, writing his name with a little marker. But now I'm like, black mold, you know, it's come back to haunt me. So everything has to be done with menucha, with simple faith, and with joy through the process. So there's the allergies things. There's diet, and when I say diet, this absolutely was significant for me to understand how food affects consciousness. And now I'm not talking unhealthiness of food, meaning allergies, etc., something that your body actually has a negative, unusual, unhealthy response to, but I'm talking normative diet and sometimes even fasting. So for myself, no one educated me that the value of what happens to my body when I eat proteins versus when I eat carbs. And I finally had a good friend take me aside one year and he kind of said, listen, if you start with all this kind of carb stuff in the morning, you're going to weigh yourself down, you're going to feel heavy and tired. He said, start with liquids and start with eggs or protein. And that was a massive difference. That was something tangible, and it's something I still maintain today. Here's a diet tip from a rabbi, always be careful of them. But I've told many people this, and this is, if you have one takeaway, no matter who you are in this video, I dare you to try this. Every morning when you wake up, start with a large cup, have a little lemon juice at the bottom, actual lemon juice, quite a bit in the bottom. Put in a little of the Tibetan salt, the pink salt, fine. Just like a little, I just like a pint and throw that in. And then I fill that up with hot water about a quarter of the way, and then the rest with cold water. So it's just warm lemon juice with a bit of salt. Now, here's my suggestion to you. Start your day with a big cup of that. Don't eat anything else after for quite a few minutes. And I think you'll see amazing results. But this is not a cure-all. I'm not charging you for this. I don't own shares in Tibetan salt or water or lemons for that matter. Everyone I tell that to, including myself, I got my wife on that, still trying to get my kids on that. That's a game changer for energy, and a feeling of cleansing in the morning is unbelievable. How's that for hype? You should totally try that out and let me know in the box how that goes. Exercise, and now I'm talking the basic things. Exercise absolutely is a game changer. Anybody that exercises know the adrenaline that comes through and the energy that comes through during and after and lasts for a period of time is fantastic. If you're suffering from energy issues for many years and you haven't done basic, eliminations and checking for allergies, and you haven't done working out how eating can give you energy when done in the difference between carbs and proteins on the most basic level, starting with liquids in the morning and not eating for a bit, and you haven't tried exercise, then I don't believe, by the way, that this is really the source of the problem. But everybody believes, and today even science believes, that's not what's coming from me, but even science believes that this is a no-brainer in contributing to cleansing yourself and adding ways to increase energy. I'm not going to get into this right now, but for me, there's a bit of controversy on this, the idea of intermittent fasting. That was actually a game changer for my energy levels, my mental focus ability. Intermittent fasting is incredible. It is today scientifically backed. There's people that teach it right, there's people that teach it wrong, there's people that say it's all dogma and garbage, and there's people that say, I know many people, including my closest friends, and we all got ourselves onto this diet. And I can tell you a bit more about it, but I'm not really here to give you dietary tips or health tips or new age eating tips. That's not my focus. And I like to do things that I know I can do well and competently. But I can definitely, with competence and clarity, say that these made a massive difference to me. And intermittent fasting basically means, and I'm not going to go really into it, but you can look it up and find good sources for it. It basically means you don't eat for about 16 hours a day. And then you condense your eating into a short window, which basically for me means you don't eat after nightfall, and you don't eat again until at 10 o'clock in the morning, that you can drink at all times. And there's a few more details in it than that. But basically you eat good food during the day, but you condense your eating into a shorter window and allow your body to replenish, purge, and cleanse during the time off. And that for me had an incredible effect, not just physically with energy, but psychologically. And I just want to add a couple of things in this moment that all Hasidic and Kabbalistic sages and all the sages from the Talmud and the Torah all constantly discuss fasting. And it was normal by most of the sages that they ate very little. They ate once a day at night or at certain times, and they didn't. Some of them ate only from Shabbos to Shabbos, which is kind of astonishing. Don't try that at home. But fasting was the normative. And by the way, Rav Nachman says extremely clearly, as do many other sources, that fasting increases mental clarity and mental energy. And if you do it with the right intent and you do it with prayer in the right way, it's incredibly powerful energetically. We are not talking about a fasting that diminishes the body. That's why intermittent fasting is you get all the nutrients, all the food that you need. You're not actually hungry. The secret is you don't get hungry when you do it properly. That's a discussion about how carbohydrates work, et cetera, et cetera. But when you do it properly, you don't get hungry. You get lots of food during the day. But you become mentally much more lucid and clear and stronger, and there's much more energy flow. So the idea of fasting and the idea of that increases physical energy, mental energy is explicitly in many, many mystical works of our tradition and all the works of our tradition. So hold that in mind as an interesting point. That's not a new age fad for the Tzaddikim. And the last thing is power naps. Again, at first I'm just starting with the obvious basic levels. The idea of a power nap is I just assumed when I was in 20 that every day I was going to take a power nap, and rather than feeling like a failure, there's top executives, in yeshiva, I was told by my rabbis, put your head down on the table for 20 minutes and you wake up clear and ready to start again the next day. Our sages are very, very clear that the reason that we sleep on the basic level is because our body and our energy becomes depleted in this world. And when we sleep, our soul leaves our body, goes back to the source world and gets re-energized. They call it chias. It's a machaya, it gives you chias. And therefore, to replenish in that way, it's replenishing of consciousness is normal and healthy. And it's just that attitude, that shift, which is not, I'm a failure because I have to rest. It's saying at this point in my life, an afternoon rest is excellent, important for who I am, and it makes me function better. So I embrace that. Now, they're all the basic, obvious things, and I hope that's boring to you if assuming you've done your homework. Now, let's move into spiritual emotional. And I'm going to run through these things, and literally each of them is a class. And hi, if you're listening right now live, you can say hi, you can ask me some questions, and let me know as we're talking. Is there any input you share, or any output you want from me? So you'll let me know. Spiritual, emotional, psychological, all these are the same things. The rule in Torah is basically that our energy comes from the source into our soul, and from the soul is transmitted into our body and our psychology and consciousness. So body means the conscious psyche, the normal self that I think is my I, right? And then there's the higher self, which we're calling the Shama or Das Elyon, which is the divine soul, etc. And what happens is the infinite light of Hashem floods through something called the Torah above. And then through that Torah above, what it does is it floods into our soul, and then it floods into our body. And there are 613, without going into the complexity of it. Hello, and I'm glad you're finding it really interesting. Without going into the complexity of it, there's a split between 365 actions, thoughts, and kinds of speech which channel in electric, positive, holy energy. And I'm sorry, there's 248 channels of particular acts, thoughts, or forms of speech which channel positive energy into our soul, which then goes into our body and our psyche. And then there's 365 channels through which they come in, which do a negative act, a destructive act called an avera, through thought, speech, or action, can actually create a block. When it creates a block, then the energy can't enter into our soul, and therefore it doesn't enter the body. And this is the secret of the mystic saying that creates energy issues in our body and our normal consciousness, and it creates deep energy issues, which eventually, if it continued to be hardwired, cause all illness. It's the source of all illness. And therefore you can see the Ma'orei Naim of Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov, countless sources in Kabbalah, in our sages, in the Talmud as well, that say besides seeing a doctor, they say really the truth is we shouldn't need to see doctors. They're not against seeing a doctor, and halachically we often should see a doctor, absolutely. But they're very, very clear that says the cause of all our illness or lack of energy comes from one of these blocks being in place, or we're not bringing the light in, or there's a block that's causing the light to not come through, to transition in. And therefore the answer they give is tshuva, is to, that terrible English word repentance, but if you've watched the Elevation Foundations, it means the transformational inner work of finding every part of our fear, or our doubt, and our lust, and our ego, and our attitude, and our beliefs, and or our actions previously, the energetic effect our actions, destructive thoughts, speech, relationships are creating in our life. They are the things that are blocking these channels, including the actual mitzvahs, spiritual imperatives from the Torah, including Shabbos, including Tefillah, including Chal, including Shabbos candles. Each of them has particular energy elements which are directly connected to our source, soul, and consciousness. And when a person clears out or aligns ourselves and returns all our blocks, all our issues, all our history, all our fallen psychological elements back to a source and realigns them, then that light can come in. So the core of everything we need to do is tshuva, to find out what are our blocks, what are our issues, and release them and cleanse them, becoming aware of that. And that's now you see the beginning of the core part of the elevation work. And that's, so therefore they say, not just going to a doctor, a person should go to the doctor, or even before they go to a doctor, a person needs to do tshuva, like what are the blocks, what's the pain, what's the anxiety, what's the fear, what's the destructive relationship, what's the lack of belief in truth, the blocks we have on perceiving Hashem's divinity and seeing it in our reality, the bitterness, the pain, the anger, the hurts, particular destructive acts we could be doing to another. That's where we must begin our cleansing, our tshuva, our transformation, and the mystics say that will cause the healing. We all have, anyone that's dealt with the world of science, with the world of healing, with medicine, knows as blessed and as a contribution that medicine has to offer. Everybody knows someone that has gone with a certain sickness to the doctors, and the doctors give them the treatment and it has no effect. And then other people that go to the doctor and the doctor gives them the treatment. There's the same treatment that applied in the same way and it has an effect in a moment. And anyone watching knows that it doesn't seem to be the medicine is the whole story. That there's something else at play. There's something else within the person. There's something else beyond the person, beyond the scientist, beyond the doctor that's affecting that. And this is what our sages are teaching us for thousands of years explicitly, that it's about the inner state of the person and what the hashgacha, the providence that's creating. And therefore, as our sages, even the Talmud suggests, that Hashem can act through the doctor if the person has spiritually done the work and is open. And if the person has spiritually not done the work and is not spiritually open for the inner transformation, that the healing, that the illness is speaking to them, then the doctor's medicine won't help and the doctor's wisdom won't help. So this idea of the inner transformation is core, and it can release the blocks in our root soul. The energy can come in and it can draw down light constantly so it can come in. So this becomes the idea that the second stage is now we're talking about the inner world, the inner cleansing, right, of the emotional, spiritual energy that we've created through destructive acts, thoughts, and beliefs, number one. And then how to draw in energy and increase that. Once you have to cleanse it, and then you have to bring it down again. So running through things, first of all, there's the concept of tshuva. This is what we've discussed many times. Second of all, there's the idea of just absorbing people's energy. I'm sure you're all shocked to hear, I'm an incredibly perceptive soul of other people's inner worlds and insightful. That's kind of what allows me to help you all and create a program like this. But of course, when you're deeply perceptive and deeply insightful, what that means on a base level is you're highly tuned into people all the time. And until only a few years ago, no one ever told me how to turn that off. And therefore, a lot of my trauma that I carried, a lot of my shadow, I've had a relatively good life. I've certainly had challenges, but I never suffered any major form of abuse or darkness. But I just felt as a child, I took on everybody's fear, everybody's pain, everybody's guilt, and spent my life trying to help that. And that all sat within me very, very deeply, especially the pain and the loneliness of my parents and all those kind of things. And there's probably more than one life that's sitting within there. So the idea to cleanse that out, the idea to learn how to real time, there's classes that I've showed you online that some of you have seen, of how to create energetic blocks that you don't let people in. I've learned to have more boundaries in life. That's one of the very key things. And therefore, I don't, two things. I don't, suck in everybody's energy all the time. I now can actually learn to block it out and cut it out, number one. And two is when their energy comes in, then it triggers my stuff, because now I feel constant anxiety that I have to help them. I have to hold them. I have to hold space for them, even though they're traumatic and actually highly destructive. And that creates inner stuff. So when you block out that, then you also don't awaken that, or you release and heal that. So then now you're much more in the open, right? So that's the second point. MMS is most of us are walking around with constant noise in our head. That constant noise in your head is taking your das, it's taking your attention. We're in that stuck thought cycles, the Nakshava spirals, as we call them. And that takes your attention. And your attention, your das, is the source and channel of your energy. Das, where you invest your attention, you invest your energy. And that means when those thoughts and images, you're like, I can't believe he did this, I can't believe he said this, I can't believe he did this, I can't believe he said this, I can't believe he did this, and I'm going back in 10 times in my life. That's actually taking your energy in real time. It's sucking it out. It's yoinic. It's because that thought and emotions are running. You get that? Those thoughts and emotions are running. What's giving them the energy to run? The answer is in Kabbalah, they're yonic, they're sucking the chiyas out of you. They are vampires sucking you, sucking the energy out of you. And that's what they run on. So as long as you have that going, that's depleting you. And you have to learn to cleanse that and clear that out. Not just stop it, but stop it at its core and uproot it at its core. Halat amidot, to uproot and transform and elevate those things back to their source. That's part of the work that we're doing here. Some people will recognize it as the noise and busyness in their head. Some people recognize it as the emotions that they're carrying, just like the anger or pain. Some people don't recognize it either. They'll actually go, I'm totally fine. But they won't sense and realize the das, the tumor, the kind of belief systems, everything's really heavy, everything really sucks. Wow, no, I can't really trust anybody. It doesn't feel like intense emotion, but it's this constant subtlety that goes in their minds, a subtle tone, if you will, a subtle hum, which is actually disconnecting them. Now, the flip side is also true. When you walk through a street and you say, oh my gosh, what's she wearing? Oh my gosh, look how bad that is. Oh, look how dark this world is. Look how much pain. Look at the politics. Oh my gosh, Trump. Oh my gosh, I don't know, Clinton. Oh my gosh, all these things. What you're doing is you're giving your attention to negative chias, to tuma, to the sitra achra, as it's called, and it actually depletes you. When you learn to see positive, we know that when we laugh at a joke, even a silly joke, we feel joy and we also feel energy. And when someone does something wonderful, you see good in someone and give them chizik, give them strength, you get energy. And by saying, oh, that guy's such an idiot, it literally in real time knocks you out of the vagus. The vagus is chias. It puts you into the body zone, the consciousness zone, the animal zone, and therefore disconnects you from that energy. So the idea of subtle harm, subtle negative beliefs, or the flip side, not activating constant good perception, true perception of good, of value in people, that literally turns you around, that literally gives you energy. And that the idea of lashon hara, negative destructive speech, absolutely knocks energy out of us. Positive speech, absolutely in real time, you can sensitize yourself to this, gives you energy and keeps that empowered. Lots of things to discuss here. Kedusha, now this for me was one of the biggest game changers, was realizing that over years, just to say the obvious, the inner work that I'm doing and the meditation I'm doing was the key game changer for me. I can't speak to the heavenly help I received through that, but prayer, I'm not even saying prayer in this context, but true prayer and deep prayer opens up all the secrets, opens up all the windows, opens up, as the sages teach us, even the things that we can't explain and we don't understand. Suddenly the energy shifts. Suddenly it's so much easier to overcome that block. Suddenly I have that insight I never had before about that thing I'd even noticed within myself. And that happens with true prayer, the vagus-based prayer, right? Now with that in mind, just Kedusha, and I've mentioned this before, I've discussed this quite a bit in our program, the premium program, but I can't emphasize enough that for me, when I sit with holy works of Torah, of Chassidus or Kabbalah, studying the text with holiness, especially first thing in the morning, we have to, at least this was a premium class, but I broke this down. When you wake up in the morning, when you turn on your cell phone, you're diving straight back into your animal soul at the time of the most sensitive, powerful energy of the day. When you wash your hands, when you begin with prayer meditation, when you dive into holy works and just connect to the energy until you feel energized, then you optimize and energize your system with the most positive form of holiness, the most positive form of energy. Remember we discussed in foundations and also in the classes, there's positive good energy and negative destructive energy. When you focus on the positive holy energy at the beginning of the day, what you do is you create an immunization effect in your system that you become so electrified with positive energy that even when you think about saying a negative thought, you just go, no. Even when someone approaches something negative, you go, no, thanks, not interested. And that begins to be transformative. That for me was the ultimate game changer. And that itself with meditation, to be able to multiple times each day to watch myself, to watch the thoughts come up, to actually have 5 or 6 times a day, I'm going to stop and meditate. A great spiritual master told me, Tzaddik told me that every day he sits down and does the makava, the yichud, which we've taught you a little, and sits down 3 or 4 times a day in the afternoon and just resets himself, eliminates the darkness, brings himself back to the light and draws the light in with the Hebrew letters and the Makava meditations. He gets energy and he goes. Realizing that I needed that because I'm low energy, allow me not just to access energy, but access positive, holy, electrified, pure, energizing, holistically inspiring, spiritual, divine energy. How's that for a bunch of adjectives? So that for me was the secret, and that was the breakthrough, to realize that I needed that, and I could start with holiness, to watch any negative thoughts, to bring my back to the homeostasis, and to bring myself more in the back to neutral, but to forward and to positive. That for me was the game changer. And when I maintained that consistently, gave myself the rest, watched the diet, but made sure there was no negative thoughts in my mind, always the positive right ones, always drawing on chias and energy, always starting the day in the right state, connecting to the Kedusha, purifying my midas over time, releasing the anger, fear, lust, into that pain that I had, the existential thing, the world is darkness and I have to save it. There's nothing more depleting than saying the world is dark and I have to save it. You can be very successful rabbi, guru, spiritual guy, I'm going to save the world from its darkness, but the core of it, you're going darkness, 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 and that is depleting. So that is a lot to think about. There's a lot to discuss. There's more to say. My computer's actually about to run out of batteries, so I'm going to end this so it doesn't suddenly make the whole video disappear. That would be chaval. There's more to discuss. That's an introduction. The key is the work that we're doing. Cleanse yourself, reconnect daily, find a meditation that works for you and do it 3, 4, 5 times. Yeshiva Das takes out the negative. Devekis, Yechudim, Aliyahs, Holy Torah, holy words, draws in the positive. Keep maintaining that. Keep exploring that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a wonderful day, Cheva.